Welcome to the last meeting of the Philipstown Planning Board for the year 2020, December 17th. Welcome aboard. We're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Who would like to lead us this time? I say Peter Lewis.
All right, please stand.
I
Pledge allegiance
pledge allegiance
to
to
the
the flag
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for which
which
it
it
stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Thank you, Peter. Well done. You learned your pledge well. All right, Kel, welcome to this meeting. We'll take a roll call, please, Kel.
Kim Connor,
Here.
Dennis Gagnon,
Here.
Peter Lewis,
Here.
Laura O'Connell,
Here.
Neil Toman,
Here.
Heidi Wendell,
Here.
and Neil Zuckerman.
Here. Great. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Kelly. Just a couple opening remarks. This has been a hell of a year for the community, this country, and for this board. It is the first time in I think I'm entering my 10th year. We've not had a break either in August or in December. Usually we take those two meetings off. We did not this year. I think it is in keeping with the difficult straits that this board and this company are going through to actually organize and keep the business of government running. At the same point, I think it's indicative of the number of projects are occurring in this community as people leave the city for either weekend homes or full-time occupants, or even expanding their homes given what has been going on with working from home. So I think we have to be mindful of the difficult straits this country is going through in this community. It is looking rosier and rosier every day, politically, socially, and medically. I feel very good about that and hope you do. I want to thank my fellow board members. This is not easy work, what you do. I want to thank our professional staff of Ron and Steve. Bob, I'll put you in the quasi version of that, not being the professional staff, but not being on the board. But most importantly, I want to thank Kelly McIntyre, who is moving upwards and outward into bigger roles in our town, going to be the deputy town clerk. Very excited for her elevation. We will miss you. It has been quite a year you were running this. I think you started in December, is that right?
Yes.
Right. So you had, I think you got the booby prize working during a crazy time, because I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, what Kelly had to do to make this all work with Zoom was much harder than any physical meeting you could put on. So thank you for your service, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to miss everybody, but I'll still be around. But thank you.
Well, you're not leaving anytime soon, so we got to keep it close. All right. Let's get approval of the November minutes, please. Have a motion to approve those minutes. Kim and Peter second silently, but we saw your mouth move, Peter. So any comments, questions, or you're still on mute? Comments, questions? There you go.
Second.
Comments, edits, comments, questions? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, great. So we're going to first cover an item that was omitted from the agenda, but it's necessary to keep Mr. Lombardi moving on with his life. We asked Ron to prepare the resolution to approve the lot line adjustment for Lombardi. That was sent by email, and everyone should have it. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve that, then we can take any comments or questions you may have on the document. But can I have a motion, please, to approve the Lombardi lot line adjustment?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Peter. Any comments or questions on it? Ron, do you want to say anything about it? I should have asked you first. I'm sorry, Ron.
No, it's fine. The board's processed lot line adjustments before. It's a standard form resolution that's used relative to seeker. It's a type 2 action, which you've already classified it as, so it's ready for action.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't go to you first. I'm sorry. Any comments or questions? None? Okay,
Nope.
I'll take a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll turn to our new business. I will be recusing myself from the Desmond Fish Library application, as I happen to be on the board of that august 40-year-old organization. And I turn it over to our first vice chair, Kim Connor.
Okay. So I guess the first thing we want to do is Glenn Watson here? Do we send it to Glenn to introduce it to us? Yeah,
That'd be
So Kelly-
appropriate, right?
Kelly, if you can let him in.
I
Is that
don't-
for the library or?
No, this is Jen McGreary.
Oh, hi, Jen.
Hi,
Recognize
Kim.
you. Tell us about your project.
Sure. Do you mind also letting Laura Peary into this meeting and giving her screen sharing abilities? Kelly,
Who are you looking for?
Laura Peary. She's the architect on the project, chief architect.
I don't see her.
P-I-E-R-I-E. She's,
She just sent a chat, I think, Kelly. In the
Laura, L-A-U-R-A.
Laura.
I don't see her on my list.
oh, that's interesting. I see her, I see the chat.
Yeah, she's in the call.
She's in the attendees section, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm in there and I do
Oh.
not have her.
She's chatting in the Zoom chat.
She must be somewhere because I can see her in the Zoom chat. Let's see in the participants.
And I'm gonna go in there.
I see Laura coming, but not.
Yeah, I do not see her.
I see Laura coming as a
Oh, here.
panelist.
I have her.
You got her?
I have her now, yes.
Good.
Thank
Cool.
you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
So I just first wanted to say thank you to the board for seeing us this evening. We're really excited about this project. It's been a long time coming. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on the project and then Laura is going to give a full presentation on the project. So solar is the main motivating factor for our project, our master site plan at all. This solar has been discussed by the board for a really long time as a possibility for the library. We've looked at doing solar on the roof. We've looked at sort of doing a maximum solar installation on the property to maximize energy generation. None of those things have seemed like a good fit for the library for various reasons over the years. And in 2016, we started a series of community conversations sort of in advance of our long-range planning. And one of the main things that we learned from the community is their love of the environment, their concern for the environment, and also about climate change. And so it sort of put solar back on the table for the library and made us refocus on it. And in 2018, we adopted our long-range plan with the goal of pursuing sustainable certification through New York State, and also recommitting to pursuing a solar project for the library. Not only just to offset our energy needs, but also to provide an educational example for the community and best practices and innovation in design, and incorporating public use of the property. So not just occupying our entire property with solar panels, but actually integrating a solar array into the property along with our other goals for the property in terms of public use and just expanding our property in general. So we did apply for a grant in 2018. We received it from the Library Construction Aid Program, and the grant was for both a solar array and a master site plan. At that time, we issued an RFP it was a publicly issued RFP for landscape architects to apply. And we ended up hiring Peary Associates because of their community-focused design process. And also the really creative approach they showed to solar wasn't just panels. They just really were thinking about it in different and unique ways. So the design process involved 3 community meetings that were advertised publicly. And they resulted in 3 different design proposals from Peary. all of which were very different. We held another community meeting to get more feedback on the existing proposals. We actually put them up for a vote process. And they allowed us to really adjust the final design to be a true reflection of what we had heard from the public into the design. And what Laura is presenting tonight is really an elegant solution that incorporates a ground-mounted solar ribbon, while also highlighting the beautiful natural landscape that our community loves on the property. And we're really proud of it. And I'm hoping that you guys will appreciate it as well. So Laura, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thank you so much, Jen, and thank you everybody for being here and hearing our proposal for the library site. So as Jen mentioned, we've been working on this project since June of 2019. There is a quick little timeline here of the 3 phases of the project where we did our investigation and looking into the circumstances of the site, a longer visioning component that culminated in a 3rd community meeting that's actually happened after the final concepts were developed, and then a final report was the outcome of that. Along the way, we took the information from the community and refined it each time in each one of those meetings. So there were lots of opportunities for people to give their opinion and help us refine and develop what was important, not only to the library, but to the community itself. Because at the time, with the adoption of the master plan, we know that the Desmond Fish Public Library is becoming is the heart of the community and takes that responsibility seriously. Jen mentioned that they had applied for sustainable certification as part of their library status, and the solar array as part of that. There was an aspiration from the sustainability point of view that the solar array or the energy generation on site be demonstrative, be a learning apparatus, true to the mission of the library, that it's a place for learning and exploration, not only about energy generation, but about sustainability of the site and about the sort of micro ecosystem that exists on these 12+ acres. The practical benefit, of course, besides the sort of teachable integration component of it, is that the solar array will reduce the operating costs, which we know for organizations, operating costs are the difficult, kind of year-to-year managing pieces. We were charged with keeping maintenance low and to create a timeless and durable amenities on the site. The second set of aspirations were around community experience, and not just a practical solution, but that one that was joyful and beautiful and welcoming, and really began to anchor the building and the site in a more expansive way as the heart of the community, to become a community hub, to create opportunities to expand the footprint of the library, not by increasing the building, but by making more specific, useful moments across the site, to use the site in all season, and to attract new users to the property. So from that, we held our first community meeting. It was a brainstorming meeting. These are some of the flip charts where we recorded people's ideas as they came out of everyone's mouths and different exercises that we led. And the ideas focused around site access, site character, the idea of solar and sustainability, and how people saw the library fitting into the community. From these ideas and from the library's directives, we actually came up with what we call a site story. And this is how we complete our design work, is we create a narrative that explains everyone's values, the practical constraints, what our aspirations are, into kind of a story about the creation of this idea and the creation of this built environment. And so to that, we observed that this, of course, moment in time that the library sits on these 12 acres is in a section between the mountains and the river. And everything that happens on the little ecosystem of the site is a result of its location in the geography and geology of the area. When we mix that with the library's goals to make a place that is welcoming and clearly public, to connect diverse communities, make energy and manage site water, which is a practical issue because of the location and because of Route 9D, water behaves in the site in a little bit different way than it was pre-development. So as a response to that, we came up with a design solution that we call Discovery Path, where we demonstrate and engage community members and patrons of the library on the site where everything in the design solution ultimately exists where it belongs. And this is part of the demonstrative or teachable moment of the built environment here, that things are oriented and organized in places within the larger ecosystem that demonstrate this the network of living things that exist on the site. To do that, we wanted to model habitat segments for learning and exploration and to harmonize site systems. We want to balance cultivated and natural landscapes and accommodate for future growth of the library. Sometime down the road, we don't know when that is. To get to that final discovery path solution, as Jen mentioned, we ended up developing 3 concepts that we presented to the public in the final public meeting. The concepts worked around different ways to organize the program components or the uses on the site. So you'll see in these 3 diagrams, which I won't go into too deeply, that the same components of a solar array, of a path around the site, of moments to engage in outdoor activities, all kind of find a different diagram or relationship in each one of these proposals that we put out there. It was a lot of fun to have the community members at the library and evaluating and giving their opinions and their input on the final schemes. Most of the people that were there that night had been there throughout the process, and they could actually see their ideas and their suggestions through the previous 2 meetings come to life in the final propositions. And so we did ranking, evaluations and discussions, and people noted their favorite scheme with stars and with numbers. And with this public input in combination with the library's internal goals, we landed on the discovery path as the preferred solution. So here's the complete site plan. And as Jen mentioned, this is a master site plan. So it's looking to the future. It doesn't mean that all of this is going to be implemented at one time. In fact, the purpose of a master plan is to look some distance out into the future and anticipate where activities may happen, so that as incremental implementation happens, we don't put something where we want to put something else, or put something in a place where it precludes a better solution down the road. So the idea of conceptualizing the entire site is not to build it at one point, but to make a proposition that can be implemented over time. So as we look at the entire site plan, it takes advantage of an emerging wetland that's up here in the northeasterly corner. Route 9D goes along this edge here. The building is in the center. So as a result of construction of 9D and other topographical characteristics, there's an emerging wetland on the site. Jen, I don't know if you want to speak to a moment about your meeting with the Conservation Board, just as we're introducing the concept here.
Yeah, we did it. We did meet with the Conservation Board. They actually came to visit the site and look at where the solar was proposed. And they have approved a permit for this project specifically, with the caveat that we plant some native plants to offset the work that's being done across that small section of the emergent wetlands. So we are planning to work with the Audubon Constitution Marsh folks to make some recommendations for native plantings along that stream. So
great, thank you. So the library is here, and the idea of the discovery path is that along the path, and you can see the edge of the path here, I'm marking that with the cursor along the site, is that throughout this kind of loop that exists, that would exist or proposed to be existing around the site, that one could travel through different microhabitats around the site. The first being a pollinator garden along this dense edge that provides nice privacy to an adjacent neighbor, and small moments for stopping or reflection along the path. A dry meadow landscape, which uses certain grasses and other things that are appropriate to a dry meadow location. There's emerging young forest here to demonstrate tree succession on the site. We want to show what a young forest looks like, what a mature forest looks like, and what a cycling forest looks like on the site. Then as we cross along this area, the path moves near the wetland and merges into a wet meadow with a series of native plants and grasses that would be found in a wet meadow landscape. And then around close to the front edge, that comes into a woodland landscape, and then back to a more cultivated landscape around the library building itself. Behind the library building, there's a desire for a reading garden, a slightly more formal landscape configuration where like an outdoor reading room. So those components along the discovery path organize the entire site. And then this element here is actually the solar ribbon array. And we call it a ribbon because it's a very light, light floating above the ground orientation of solar panels. It faces due south. So you can see down here, here's the north arrow up this way. So the main idea of this site diagram is that everything happens in its place, as I mentioned. So we use what we found in terms of water and topography on the site and placed all the program elements that the library wanted in an orientation where they maximize their own sustainability as part of the system. So the components of this discovery path proposal that we're talking about today that are being implemented this year and next year and that we're seeking site plan review for are the discovery path, which is a 3-foot wide crushed stone path on supported sub base. It's about 6 inches deep and 3 feet wide. We're building it that way so that it's accessible by anyone who needs assistance or in a wheelchair or traveling by foot. The second component is the solar array. This process, as Jen mentioned, has been grant supported, and the grant and work determines that now we're in the phase where this is being built, and hopefully, should it receive approval, will be complete by the summer, which is a parameter of the grant. And then the reading garden behind the library itself. So there was and this was built or started this past summer. The plantings are not complete yet. There's a low retaining wall that goes along the back of the property, and that was to provide ADA access up to the reading garden so it would be accessible to all community members. So those are the 3 components: the reading garden, the discovery path, and the solar array that are part of this application. Here's an image that we created standing looking about at this location as the path, the discovery path bends around, and you can see the solar array to your right. So this is the discovery path bending around. As I mentioned, it's a stone dust path on a supported subbase. It's about 3 feet wide, about 6 inches deep. These are the plantings of the natural grasses. Portions of them will be able to be grown long, and other parts of the grass of the lawn area that we know is open will be mown. You can see the beginning of the emerging young forest here. The array floats lightly over the landscape, feeling like it's a ribbon blowing in the wind. We felt like that was a delicate light touch way to touch the ground, but also creates an artful and demonstrative form in the landscape. And if you look over to the left, you can see just beyond here is where the library would be, and here's the profile of the mountains across the river. So focusing in on the 2 areas, 2 of the 3 areas, the reading garden we spoke about quickly. This is the wetland landscape, so you can see a sketch of a similar view that I just showed you with the library in the background, the dry grasses, the wetland grasses around. This is the solar ribbon itself here. The path comes along the front of it. There's a small footbridge that goes across a wetland area, and the plantings in this area are meant to, on the whole site are actually meant to be native plantings. The meadow landscape, and this is viewed from behind the library where the reading garden, if you look, here's the library building here. This is the viewport. It's looking from the south to the north at the face of the ribbon. So you can see the ribbon remains very delicate and low in the landscape and combined in with grasses and plantings that will eventually happen. And this is the portion of the path that looks through that area. And here are some example plant materials. From a practical level, there are, as we know in this site, this toned line here represents the scenic protection overlay of the site. Here's the library building itself. There are several other setbacks that are noted here. This is an excerpt of the plan that was submitted, so we can see the plan here. This is that partial retaining wall along which the accessible grade path is set up. This is the reading garden itself. This is the final configuration of the discovery path at this time. It's a portion of it. And then here's the solar ribbon array at this point. And then the footbridge is here at this point. A few practical considerations. The area of disturbance of the project Although it covers a large area, the actual area of disturbance for each portion of the project is fairly limited. The area of disturbance for the reading garden, which is this area behind the library, because we had to regrade it for accessibility and to create planting beds, the area of disturbance for that was 7,000 square feet of planting beds and garden elements, low retaining walls, benches, paths. The solar array itself is, although the array takes area on the site disturbance for that is very limited because it's just the pile foundations that go down into the ground. We're planning on piles every 8 to 10 feet. So the total area of disturbance for the solar array is about 2,500 square feet, 2,600 square feet. And then the stone dust paths and the grading for the path ends up disturbing about 4,250 in total. So the total site disturbance area for the boardwalk, the dust paths, and the grading is about 7,500 square feet. So the reading garden was underway and complete, except for a few plantings in 2020, and that was about 7,000 square feet. The solar array and the walk total to just under 8,000 square feet. The two add up to about 15,000 square feet. So you can see the total work anticipated for 2020 and the total work area in 2021, each of which is less than 10,000 square feet. So I think that's the overview.
Okay. So I guess like the first question I have is for Steve Gaba, who's the board's attorney, because typically when people come before us with a master plan, they get permission for the entire master plan before they start executing any pieces of it. So Steve, I'd just like your opinion on segmentation here.
Well, the key element here is, as was mentioned, that the rest of the development that's being considered is just that, under consideration. There's no funding for it. There are no plans to undertake it in the immediate future. That may change at some point, but the fact is right now, whether those additional elements will ever be constructed is speculative. And that being the case, it is not segmentation under SECRA to consider only what is currently being proposed. I would add, however, that if in the future the additional elements are added to the site plan, SECRA review will encompass not just the new elements, but the new elements plus what's there already. You'll look at the whole, oops, what happened there? You'll look at the whole when you conduct that SECRA review, if that ever occurs. So Ron and I discussed this to some degree, and I'm confident that you don't have a segmentation issue here and you can proceed to process only what's being proposed at this time.
Thank you. So Ron, I'd like to hear your comments.
Sure, the board has a technical memorandum from my office. As is discussed, there's an overall master plan that's been envisioned by the library, but they're proceeding currently with only 3 of the elements that are outlined tonight. Relative to the preliminary considerations that the board addresses in their initial meeting, first you should classify the project as the applicant indicates. The overall disturbance envisioned would represent would classify the project as a major project. And so that should be accomplished tonight. And as the board understands, the only significance to that is that it mandates a public hearing, which should not be a significant issue for the library. With respect to seeker, Steve has just touched on the issue of the segmentation, so the board can obviously move forward with just the elements that are under discussion tonight. Your initial discussion there and consideration is whether to have a coordinated environmental review or not. As the applicant indicates, they've already been before the Conservation Board. That would be the only other involved agency that requires permitting on the project. May be appropriate to do a coordinated review just to have that all resolved. Actually assists the applicant over time. The other matter to consider initially is just the issue of referrals. Since it lies along Route 9D, referral to county planning is necessary. And typically you would also make referral to the Conservation Board, even though they've initiated that process. So those are the initial matters to consider at this point. And then lastly, whether you consider the need or desirability of having a site inspection to understand any site-specific issues that may be apparent by such a visit.
And I think we need a 239M referral too.
Yeah, that's county planning.
Oh, you mentioned that? I apologize. I must have missed it.
Okay. Yeah, that referral is necessary.
Can I ask Ron what the county planning approves? I'm not familiar with that process.
It's just a requirement when you lie within certain distances of major elements, county roads, state roads, recreation areas. It's a mandatory referral. It's not an actual approval, but referral is necessary. And they have 30 days in which to respond. The only significance is if they recommend denial of the project, the board would have to act with a supermajority to move it forward. Typically, that does not happen.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes they can make comments which would be binding as well. You need a supermajority to overcome a mandatory comment from county planning. So we'll see. I don't anticipate that. I really don't see that there's going to be much for them to say in this instance, other than perhaps they like the project.
Okay. So are there any comments from the board? Peter, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Off mute. It was mentioned that the solar array, the path, and the bridge will be going through wetlands. And so I was wondering if there had been any talk about foreseeable issues with that. And since you've already gone to the Conservation Board, whether they had weighed in on that in any way?
They have weighed in on it. It's a minimal impact on the wetlands. The piece of it is very small. They actually came for a site visit, Peter, to look at where it goes through the wetland. And because it's on helical piles, it's a pretty minimal impact on that area. The one thing that they did say, a condition of the permit, is that we will plant some native plants along another piece of the wetland to sort of offset the immediate impact on the place that we're going to be going through.
Anything else, Peter?
That's it for me.
Okay, anybody else?
Thanks, Jim.
Question? Neil.
Yeah, I was actually at that meeting. I was pitching for Glenwood. So I'm not, we got a little bit of background here, but Laura, we have the delineated wetlands area. Is there a stream? Is there a classified stream in that area, or is it just a wetland because it's a low-lying area?
It's an emerging wetland. It's not, it tends to be seasonal. It was classified as emerging and not requiring anything more than the local wetland jurisdiction review. So it's not requiring state wetland review, and there's no water body that's moving through it. We suspect that it's created as a result of the berming, at some point in time with Route 9 and the high ledge that exists in the area. Nonetheless, it creates an opportunity to create a diverse landscape on the library site. And so we were kind of excited about taking advantage of that as part of this kind of experiential path.
Okay, so there was no stream disturbance. There was no Article 15 required by the DEC. Okay. And you have commented on the impact, the disturbance related to the installation, but I'm not seeing any comments about this wiring has to get hooked into the building somehow.
The trench, correct. The trench area is included in the summary of the square footage of disturbance for the array. So from the southwesterly extent of the array, which is the closest distance to the library building, there is a trench that travels along the edge of the path to the library building, and that square footage of disturbance is included in the summary.
Okay, so there's, all right, so the Conservation Board is good with that. That's fine.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so in that case, I think the first thing we want to do is classify this project. I'd like to have someone make a motion to classify it as a major project. Peter, second. Laura, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's great. The second thing would be to decide what kind of seeker review. We're going to the recommendation is that we classify it as a unlisted action under seeker. Can I get a motion for that? Peter, second.
Or second.
Neil, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's good. The next thing to do would be to make a referral to county planning at 239M. Need a motion to make that referral. Peter, second. Neil, oh, I'm sorry, was that you, Neil?
Second, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The next thing would be to make a referral to the Conservation Board, even though they've already seen this, just to make sure we're including them. Anybody want to make that motion? Peter,
I'll
second.
make that motion.
Neil, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Boy, Dennis, you're on a real lag.
Yeah, really, I know. My Wi-Fi is so slow up here.
Okay, so then the next thing to do is to decide whether or not we want to have a site visit.
Well, no, I think you need to determine if you want to do a coordinated review under.
Oh, right. Sorry,
And if you
Steve.
do, you want to circulate
ahead of
to the
myself.
agency or.
Okay. So would anyone like to make a motion? Do we want to do a coordinated review or an uncoordinated review? I think the recommendation was that we make a coordinated review.
I make a motion to do a coordinated review.
Peter, second.
A second.
Laura,
I'll-
all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. So now the site visit.
Well, no, you want to circulate for lead agency because you obviously want to be the lead agency. You could have done that all in one motion, but
I'm sorry, I thought I just did that.
you just made it a coordinated review. If you want
Oh,
to do a
I thought that
coordinated review,
implied
but
that we
you
were
still
lead
need to-
agency. Sorry, Steve.
Not necessarily.
All right, so would someone like to make a motion that we call ourselves lead agency?
Circulate for lead agency. You gotta
Circulate
send
for
out a
lead
letter.
agency. Better language. Dennis, you want to make that motion?
I'll make that
Give you a
motion.
chance.
Yay.
Second,
I'll second.
Peter, all in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Steve, site visit?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So Kelly,
Yes.
what opportunities do we have?
You can do January of 2021 on the 17th,
When's our next meeting?
the 21st.
Okay, how's that work for everybody?
What day was that?
Sunday, the
17th?
17th of January.
1/17/21.
Yep,
It's okay with me.
all right.
I'm
So
good.
anybody who can't do it? Okay, so that's 9:30 on Sunday, the 17th of January. Do we have to make a motion for that, Steve, or do we? I can't remember. Yeah? Okay, so can someone make a motion that we have a site visit on Sunday, January 17th, 9:30 a.m. at the Desmond Fish Library?
I'll make that motion.
Peter, second. Neil, all in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So I think that's it for this month for this project. So
Can I
we
ask a
will,
quick question? Sorry.
Sure, sure.
In terms of the public hearing, is that the next January meeting or
no,
how does
Um,
that?
typically what we do is we go and take a look at the site, which might provoke some questions, which will result in a memorandum from Ron about the questions that we had. And then we'll come back to talk about it at our meeting because we can't talk anywhere except at the meetings. And at that point, we would potentially schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any action that the library needs to take in the meantime, in reference to any of these referrals or anything like that?
No, the planning board secretary makes the referrals. So that's not something that's on your plate.
Thank you.
Sure. I will turn the meeting back over to Chairman Zuckerman.
Well, you have proven yet again why you are the first vice chair. Well done. Okay, we have a pig and a python situation. We have an extraordinarily ambitious and impressive project now, which we're going to hear from. The first conversation, it will not be the last, but it's an impressive and audacious piece of, I guess I'd call it environmental and physical engineering for our community. And so I don't know, is Glenn, are you presenting? I know there's a cavalcade of folks that represent both Shakespeare and the golf course. Are you the guy?
Well, I'm in the queue, but I'm not first. Kate Lieberman is first.
Okay, so just as a reminder, Kate, Glenn, and anyone else from the applicants, we're not gonna get this done tonight. So let's get the process started. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 other actions in front of you, and we will go for another hour and 20 minutes. So if you could try to not be fast, but let's just realize we don't have to get everything in one night. And I don't know how many questions we're going to have, but this is clearly if not the largest, certainly one of the largest projects this board has seen in a decade. So we look forward to hearing from you and spending time with you.
Thank you, Neil. Am I up? Is it?
You're up.
Good. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Zuckerman. Thank you, members of the Planning Board. I'm Kate Lieberman, Managing Director of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, where I lead the theater alongside Davis McCallum, our Artistic Director. We are thrilled to be in front of all of you, albeit over Zoom tonight, to share our vision and the comprehensive plan for the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival's first ever permanent home, and thanks to the extraordinary generosity of Garrison resident Chris Davis. I just want to take 1 minute to put our proposal into context. We were founded here in 1987 with an outdoor production of A Midsummer Night's Dream at Manitoga. The following year, Boscobel House and Gardens agreed to host our performances on their grounds, and we've been a seasonal tenant there ever since. Over the past 33 years, we've become an integral part of the cultural life of the Hudson Valley. Our summer season of 3 to 4 plays is presented in rotating repertory under our iconic custom designed open air theater tent with seating for 530. We've built a loyal and enthusiastic audience, some of whom first came here as kids and are now bringing their own children to the tent. Our year-round education programs enjoy robust partnerships with all the local schools, reaching over 35,000 students and educators across the region each year. Our year-round staff of 8 all live in this community. I'm the former president of the Cold Spring Area Chamber of Commerce. Our education director, Sean McNall, sits on the Haldane School Board. Davis McCallum is a member of the Philipstown Climate Smart Task Force. At the height of our summer season, we employ over 200 people on stage, off stage, front of house, and the administrative office. For many young people in this community, a summer job at Shakespeare is a rite of passage. So yes, HVSF is a nonprofit theater company, but we are also a local organization with a deep foundation in this community. I know I speak on behalf of our staff and our board when I say how grateful we are to be a part of this extraordinary place and how eager we are to root ourselves here permanently for the first time. Our presentation tonight will include remarks from Chris Davis and Davis McCallum about the vision for the property and what Chris's gift will allow for HVSF and our local community. Our architect, Thomas Waltz from Nelsonford Waltz, will walk you through our comprehensive site plan, and Dan Hollis and Glenn Watson will offer our request for your consideration. We're also joined tonight by Chip Allman, the general manager at the Garrison, as well as our traffic and environmental consultants who are on hand to answer any questions as well. We're honored to begin this process with all of you tonight. Thank you. I'd like to introduce after me the extraordinary Chris Davis, owner of the Garrison, whose visionary philanthropy is why we get to be here in front of you tonight. Thank you.
Chris, are you with us?
Yeah.
We see, there you go.
There we go. All right. Hello, Neil. Hello, everyone. And I'm happy to see some familiar faces, and I'm really excited to present this project. And one of the things I think Neil rightly reflects on is that in some ways this is a big project, but in other ways it's really an incremental project. There are two organizations that are part of the fabric of this community and are making sure that they stay here. And so by bringing them together, that's how we hope to achieve it. So I was asked by Kate and Davis and Neil to give a little bit of background and what my own background was for this project and what my goals are for this property. And I'll be very brief because I really want you to hear from the team. You know, I moved to this community 25 years ago and I instantly got the fervor of the converted. I think it happens when you've lived in a lot of other places. You realize that this is a rare place, and it's a rare in its sense of community and neighborhood and civility. And you know, I think when you love a place, you've got to invest in it. And I've done all I can since I've lived here to try to celebrate and preserve and to play a part in the growth of this community. And so it started with my work at the Land Trust, which I was proud to chair for 15 years or so. And that organization went from being a repository easement to really having as its mission the preservation and celebration of the character of the Hudson Highlands. And I'm proud of that work there. But maybe my biggest investment in the community happened at the golf course. And some of you know, have seen me on the golf course. I don't really play golf. And Joe, the golf pro there, actually said I would do better with a croquet mallet. So this was not a project of love of golf. But what had happened was as you know, Bill Brown's had been the tenant on this property for a long time. It was a health farm and place where celebrities would go and dry out. And then some local residents developed the golf course as a community asset. And then they sold out to the Japanese. And they sold out for reasons that are relevant to this group and this project. Because operating a property like this and trying to do so as a community asset is not really a profit-making. And they sold out to the Japanese. And this is sort of where I came in. The Japanese collapse happened in the time that I lived here. And the Japanese were desperate, an insurance company, to sell the property at a fire sale price to whoever could show up and put cash on the barrelhead. And a developer surfaced who said that his plan was to put 200 townhouses on the property. And all I knew is that would be a devastating change in the place in all different ways. And it would take this asset out of the community. So I bought it, and with the goal of it remaining not a private golf club, not transforming it in that way, but really having it remain part of the fabric of the community. And a lot of people on the town, I remember Bill Mazuka telling stories about his kids getting married there. And so it was part of the fabric of the place. And I was lucky to get Chip Allman, who had known for years before, and manage it. He's been in that role ever since. And he is as much part of the fabric of the place as anybody I know. And I've been really proud of what he's built and done and protected there. So anyway, it brings us to where we are now, because part of this community and part of the reasons we celebrate this community is because it's not just Shakespeare and the golf course. It's the library, as you heard, Boscobel, Manitoga, Constitution Marsh, the Historic Society. There's an incredible amount of community engagement. But I think of all of these organizations, Hudson Valley Shakespeare is really the jewel in the crown. I mean, we all know what it means to this community, both from a practical point of view, but also for our families, for our kids. And when I heard that they were determined under their incredible new leadership with Davis and Katie, they had plans that really rightly require them to have a permanent home. And when that was impossible, Boscobel, that they were considering leaving Philipstown, I realized this was the opportunity. And I saw the opportunity from their perspective, but also from mine, because the simple fact is I intend to live a long time and I intend to be in this community until I'm, carried out of it feet first. But what I know is that, running a business, even though it's a huge employer, we do lots of weddings, we have lots of rounds of golf. This is not a profit-making venture. And I've subsidized this golf course on average virtually every year. And that's not sustainable. It's certainly not something I could do to my kids, for example. And so trying to find a permanent home that protected it as a community asset, not just as a conservation vehicle. It would be easy to let it turn into second growth forest, but instead to try to have it remain a community asset. So that's when these two ideas came together. Shakespeare, everything to this property. They want to build a permanent home. They want to have everything that they've done at Boscobel be part of this property. It works perfectly with the restaurant and the wedding business that we already have there. It works perfectly in terms of the long-term conservation values and the ability for the community to be absolutely a part of this property. And so it was sort of a no-brainer when it all came together. So they keep thanking me for it, but of course they bought a solution to me that mattered as much as my solution to them matters. And I think as we come before you, I think the one thing I'd say, having looked at a lot of development projects from my role at the Land Trust, is that the ones that matter the most are when you trust the people and you trust the institutions. And the downside of these two places, leaving the community or going to places, was so terrible. And it was terrible economically, but it was also terrible for the culture of the place. And the opposite is also true, to have them both have a permanent solution and put down the roots and build on the roots in the community. And then to have Davis and Katie bring in and their board this incredible world-class team. I mean, Studio Gang and Thomas Woltz. I mean, these are places that the greatest universities and the greatest parks projects anywhere in the world, they're on the short list. And so to have them invested in this project speaks not to the scale of the project, because it's a small project, but it speaks to the values and the principles of the people involved. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Davis with my enormous thanks that he was willing to reconsider leaving Philipstown and for he and Katie to put down their roots here. So I'll pass it to you, Davis.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much, Chairman Zuckerman and members of the board. My name's Davis McCallum. I'm the Artistic Director at HVSF. Can you hear me okay? My role tonight is to share with you a brief overview of our vision of the project, which we hope will allow HVSF to transition from being seasonal tenants to becoming a year-round cultural anchor and recreational resource in the Hudson Highlands, while also developing community-rich stewardship of this important landscape in a way that is both environmentally and financially sustainable. Our vision for the site is centered on three broad categories. First, cultural placemaking. Second, community engagement. And third, environmental sustainability. We believe that these three areas align well with the goals outlined in the updated Philipstown Comprehensive Plan. First, cultural placemaking. HVSF's mission is to engage the widest possible audience in a theatrical celebration of our shared humanity. And our new home will be a place of gathering and belonging with the theater at the center. The improved facilities will support our commitment to artistic excellence with a permanent tent theater and the backstage spaces to support it, as well as on-site artist housing to ensure that our theater is a place where the most talented artists in the country continually want to work. Our ambition is to create one of the most extraordinary open-air theaters in the country and a valuable addition to the vibrant cultural life of the Hudson Highlands. A second, community engagement. We hope our new home will enable our already robust education programming to wrap around the calendar year. And an extended performance season will allow for student matinees for the first time ever in September and October. We hope to activate partnerships with other Hudson Valley nonprofits, environmental, indigenous, historical, among others, to offer a uniquely intersectional on-site educational experience for students. Our indoor and outdoor spaces will be actively shared with other organizations in our community, ensuring that the campus serves as a year-round resource and local hub. And we've already had meetings with representatives of other organizations of all different kinds in recent weeks. And I think we've had almost 70 people in conversation about on-site partnership. The property itself is a remarkable place from which to enjoy the majesty of the Hudson Highlands. And we want this exalted experience to be available to everyone, not just HVSF ticket holders or patrons. And the rolling parkland on the property will be available for passive uses such as walking and biking as we transition 9 holes of the golf course to an open green space offered freely as an amenity to the public. Third, environmental sustainability. As Chris mentioned, this incredible gift preserves this important landscape from suburban sprawl while also transforming it as a vibrant asset to the community. Our role as stewards will be to take care of this land on behalf of our neighbors by restoring native meadows, thereby reducing the use of fertilizer and supporting biodiversity, planting new trees, protecting wetlands, and establishing an ecological maintenance plan for the entire site. As a theater, we hope to be a national model for sustainability in the performing arts, with an ongoing commitment to green production practices integrated into all aspects of our operation. The plan that Thomas will outline momentarily represents our long-term vision for the site to ensure that we wouldn't be back in front of this board in several years with amendments. But our short-term goal is to commence performances on the site in some provisional facilities in the summer of 2022. Boscobel has graciously offered us a 1-year extension of our lease there, should we be able to produce theater this coming summer. But beyond that, we will be without a place to pitch our tent, so to speak. As we move into this new chapter, we hope to extend our record of civic engagement with our neighbors and open up our new home in ways that make a meaningful contribution to the quality of life in this remarkable community. And we are deeply grateful to be a part of it. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And I'm now going to turn it over to Thomas Waltz from Nelson Bird Waltz, who's going to share the comprehensive plan that we have developed for the site. Thank you.
Mr. Waltz.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Thanks, everyone, for your time tonight. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here and to present to you this vision for the Hudson Valley Shakespeare at the Garrison. I will swiftly walk you through the master plan and the phase 1. If you have any questions, I'll be mindful of the chat and watch for hands if you have questions along the way, or happy to open up for questions at the end. To review the parcels in question, I wanted to draw your attention to the 53 acres that is the core of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival campus. The 27 acres along Route 9 is the challenge parcel that we are taking into account as part of an overall master plan for the vision. And then 92 acres remains as the lower 9 holes for the Garrison Golf Club, retaining a 28-acre parcel for residential use. I'll walk you through the plan as it has been developed over the past few months. And we'll begin off of Snake Hill Drive. I hope you can see my cursor. Just anybody, Davis, a thumb up if you can see my cursor on the lake. Thank you. One can imagine entering here across the bridge, swinging to the right, and making your way through the campus and back to Route 9. So this through road will resolve some of the confusing road networks that currently exist at the Garrison. By swinging wide here, we can accommodate new parking in this lot. And the visitor experience, the guest experience would be to park in this lot, and then you're welcomed by this threshold building that we have not designed yet, but we imagine as two pavilions that function as a kind of gateway where people might pick up their picnic baskets, get their tickets. It's really the welcoming point. And number 8 is what we're literally calling the welcome garden. And this is a chance to talk about the Native American heritage of the site, the colonial heritage of the site, and even to evoke some of the horticulture that's present in the works of William Shakespeare. So it really is a kind of cultural gathering point for all of the guests to migrate to this threshold moment where they are invited up the hill to the crest of the hill to the new tent designed by Studio Gang. To the right of the tent is concessions, and to the left of the tent, number 2, is back of house. And then 3 lawn areas will accommodate the picnicking that happens before the Shakespeare performances that the organization is so well known for. The number 14 is the idea of a community pavilion, an open air pavilion where education, community events could occur. The rest of the Garrison remains as is, with the addition of hotel rooms at number 15. Number 16 is parking that would be added to accommodate the ongoing weddings and hotel guests at the Garrison, as well as backup parking for the tent theater. While we're back at the original parking, I'll draw your attention to number 13. There would be an eventual year-round indoor theater venue. Number 15 is artists' housing that might be prefabricated modules for the performers to stay in. What you're seeing to the right here is an eventual alteration where currently the entrance, the historic gates, you come straight up this alley of trees to this intersection. By proposing eventually to swing this road quite wide around, we arrive to back of house, easy access to back of house, as well as this additional parking, as well as a very logical entrance to the Garrison. And what that does is it brings transit of cars, vehicles to the perimeter and unites this entire swath of land as a strolling park for the community. So as we've worked with the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, they're intent on this feeling like a welcoming campus for everyone. It is a place of contact with nature, of contact with the spectacular views to the Hudson Valley, and to learn about the history of Shakespeare. All of the gestures of this master plan have been about good land stewardship, about education, and about creating a porous campus for this community. In the woods, you can see this light dashed line are proposed walking trails to bring people into the forest that takes you down toward the Hudson River. I should mention also, pardon me, that down number 10 is a proposed new pro shop and cart barn. And this is the parking lot for the golf course for the lower 9. So we continue to have golf. The closest it comes is the number 11, and then swings back down the hill and continues on the other side of Snake Hill. I wanted to walk you through the phase 1 concept because we're presenting the entire master plan, but we wanted to explain carefully what could be expected or what is hoped for with your approval between 2021 and 2024. So now that you've seen the comprehensive plan, this is what we believe would be a reasonable phase 1 in order to have this hard hat season in 2022. That would mean reutilizing the current tent that is put up each year at Boscobel, and not the expense of a new tent yet, but using the current tent and building number 2, which is the back of house. In our extensive conversations with this client group, it's been interesting their care for the nurture and treatment of their performers, and for the very first structure to be the back of house, the changing rooms, restrooms for the performers was unanimously the first decision that the leadership and the board wanted to do. So that means reusing the tent for what we're calling the hard hat season. A little bit of an ongoing construction site, a little bit of duct tape for that first season, but reusing the old tent, I think also is a kind of lovely step toward the future campus. We would propose to build this initial parking lot that proposes 225 spaces, sustaining the 83 parking spaces at the Garrison, adding 60 spaces down below for the golf club, and then creating really just the path that allows universal accessibility from parking up to the tent site and to the picnic lawn. What you're seeing in a sort of richer greenish brown is a warm season meadow that would be planted here along the entry drive, as well as here along the slopes. We're about 1,150 feet from Route 9 with the tent, and it sits atop a hill with about a 30 to 40 foot grade change. So we hope that, we believe that sound will not be an issue. The tent has earthworks around it, and of course is looking toward the river. Just to finish out on parking, we have the 42 spaces at back of house currently, and approximately 18 spaces here at the end of the hotel that exist already. Phase 1B would be the season of 2023 and 2024, and here is where the new tent designed by Studio Gang would be installed. This gatehouse structure, the welcome building, welcome center would be built, and the welcome gardens would be complete. The existing cottage that is currently the resident for the director of the Garrison would be repurposed as offices, administrative offices for the staff. Here you're seeing a rendering from Studio Gang of what the tent structure and the seating for approximately 525 people would be, focused on the view to the river. A few precedent slides. Obviously, these have not been designed. This structure has not been designed, but these are some ideas about this gateway building or welcome center. I bring your attention to the lower right, imagining a piece of architecture that really is a threshold, a doorway to the hilltop and to the experience of theater beyond. These are 4 different projects in 4 different places, but it gives you an idea of this small, nimble structure that would serve as a threshold to the theater experience. The paths will be a mix of some hard paths for universal accessibility for strollers, wheelchairs, people of all abilities, as well as mown paths through this warm season grass meadow, akin to the previous project at the library that you just reviewed, and creating this immersion into the landscape of the Hudson Valley that is such an essential part of the magical theater experience of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. This is a rendering showing the parking lot, the welcome garden here with strolling paths that all collect at the welcome building, this welcome center. The 2 pavilions, perhaps, again, this is not designed and not in our first phase of construction, but I think the essential point is that this building be a welcoming threshold to your journey up the hill to the theater at the top. This is the eventual concession building with a green roof, and the back of house actors building is just to the left, off screen here to the left of the tent. You can see the lawn areas we're imagining for picnicking, shade trees included, a second lawn, a very small retaining wall here that might be for pre-performance lectures where maybe some performers or the director might come and speak to the audience. And then a number of paths that create daily connectivity on this campus between the existing Garrison buildings, the eventual permanent year-round theater, and the administration that would be at the just off screen. This next visualization is looking up the three lawns toward the eventual tent, the shade trees, the rougher grasses, mown lawn in just these elliptical lawn areas, and then the open meadow in the distance. And then down at the bottom of this hill behind my cursor is where the parking lots would be. So you can see the new seating area under the tensile structure. This is the back of house structure that's really built into the slope in the land. And here is the concession structure. So very nimble, very light, small buildings to support the real magic, which is the performers in the open, in nature. This section we thought might be helpful. You can see in this cross section, this is going from the berm behind the theater that will help mitigate sound coming to the theater from the road and from the theater out to the road. Here is the tent, the 3 tent lawns, the parking lot that exists at the Garrison and down into the forest. So now going left to right, we have the existing ridge, the berm here, the surface of the tent, first lawn, second lawn, lower lawn, the meadow slope down to this outdoor community pavilion, and then the slope that exists to the reception hall at the Garrison, its service road behind, and then the hiking paths down in the rehabilitated woodland below. This cross section takes us from, in the upper right corner, looking toward the river, takes us through the tent, down the meadow, through the welcome garden, the new parking, the existing lake and pond to Route 9. So here we have back of house at far left, the tent structure, the restroom and concessions, the slope, the welcome pavilion, the welcome garden, the parking, the perimeter road, the existing ponds and the parkland, and then Route 9 here on the far right. So we're at a substantial distance. I mentioned before, 1,100 feet from the road. This I'm just to end tonight, leaving you with this, the full build out of the campus. And this is an image of a small theater by Studio Gang. And number 7 is the year-round theater that I mentioned before. So that image is a good precedent for that. In this, you're seeing the full build out that I walked you through at the beginning, but this is a chance to show you some of the ideas for one other structure, sorry, that I neglected to mention, number 2, which is a proposed rehearsal structure parallel to the existing cottage that is the director's residence for the Garrison. Just south of it would be this rehearsal space. And to, again, not designed yet, but the idea that it might be something like one of these kind of barn-like structures. Maybe it draws influence from agrarian structures or even the cottage itself that it would be next to, so that it really fits within the context. And then for that community pavilion that I mentioned down near the existing hotel, a lightweight open air structure for outdoor education and community gathering. These are precedents for the year-round theater, as I mentioned, and then precedents for the artist's housing. Nimble, small, perhaps even prefabricated structures, lightly sitting on the land, but in a way sited together so there is a sense of community between the staff and performers who spend their summers here. Just some precedents of other projects we've designed with this idea of really getting people immersed into the landscape of the Hudson Valley. in very light and delicate ways, but providing them that contact with nature. So I will end there, and happy to field any questions anyone has. And Davis and Katie and Chris, if I missed anything, please add.
Well, Thomas, before we go on, we just so we know, we have many more activities to do tonight, and I'm going to ask Steve and Ron procedurally about how we handle questions this evening, both from the public and from the board, and whether we can even have a dedicated session to this topic, much like we did with Hudson Highlands Reserve, where we had a separate evening, I believe, a workshop to take community input. So we can talk about it in a second. I believe Glenn hasn't gone yet, though. So maybe we let Glenn do his thing as well. Glenn, you're on mute.
Okay, long red button, sorry. I don't have an awful lot to say right now. I mean, you've gotten a pretty good overview of everything that's going on here. And as I said to the town board when we met, we've had some very exciting projects, and this is right there at the top of them. You've all received Ron's memo, which gives you a history of the property, as well as walks you through the steps that are necessary in order to accomplish this, at least the regulatory steps that are in the different bodies. So I'm not gonna say much else for that. I would ask if it might not be better to have Ron just give his couple of minutes.
Fine,
and then hand it off to Dan Hollis, who will actually make a request of what we would like to accomplish tonight. I'm sure Dan would only take a minute or so, and we could wrap it up.
Well, why don't we finish with the applicant going, and then we can have the staff talk. So if your colleague, Mr. Hollis, would like to speak, that's fine.
Very good.
Mr. Hollis, you're on mute.
There I am. All set?
You are now here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a privilege for me to be here and to be part of this team. As Glenn Watson mentioned, Mr. Gaynor's memo is quite expansive and comprehensive as to what he sees as the next steps. And all I would really like to take a minute to do is just to ask, what your view of those next steps would be. You have motions that you would make for notice of intent to be lead agency, setting a site visit if you'd like to do that, having our next appearance set up, since it should be a coordinated review, as Mr. Gaynor correctly points out, whether that public session should be after the site walk and after perhaps a joint meeting with the town board and the conservation board. We're at your service to provide any and all opportunities to discuss this project as thoroughly, as transparently, and as comprehensively as we can. So you all know what the process is to follow Mr. Gaynor's roadmap. You've done it already tonight on a couple of projects. And so I'll step aside and let your consultants take over and be back for any input or questions you or any of them might have.
All right. I take it, Mr. Hollis, you're the attorney?
I am. I'm from
Okay.
Hollis, Laidlaw, and Simon
Okay.
in Mount Kisco, New York.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you very much. Ron, over to you.
Okay, very good. The board has the memorandum that I had issued earlier. One thing that's not been made too obvious tonight, but multiple boards are involved in this project. There's actually a 4-lot subdivision that's being proposed to accomplish the property transfers from the golf course to the Shakespeare Festival. It requires subdivision approval from the planning board, as well as site plan and special permits, which will be acted on in due course. But the town board is also involved because they're seeking uses that are not currently permitted on the property. So the town board is likewise involved in this process. So there's going to be one significant bit of coordination between the boards to process the variety of actions that are necessary to bring this to fruition. To start, just from the planning board's perspective, as we always do, initially you should be classifying the project. Obviously, given its magnitude, it's a major project, and it could be classified as such tonight. With respect to seeker, as is indicated, it's a type 1 action, should be classified as such tonight, and that mandates a coordinated environmental review. To accomplish that, once you declare the project a type 1 action, you could also declare your intent to become lead agency and circulate to all other agencies that are involved. My memorandum tries to summarize the variety of outside agencies and departments that will be involved in the review and approval of the project. But all of that notice starts with declaring your intent to be lead agency pursuant to seeker, so that should be done tonight. Again, as Dan Hollis indicates, you should determine whether you're prepared at this point to schedule a site inspection of the project, but you certainly should be moving forward on all necessary referrals.
Thank you, Ron. Steve?
I think Ron covered it pretty well. The only thing I would add is that this project is a little different than ones that the board's dealt with in the past, in that the zoning is not yet in place for the approvals that they're seeking from this board. What they're doing is proceeding down parallel tracks, if you will, one before the town board to seek the zoning change necessary for the project, and the other before this board to seek the site plan, subdivision, special permit, etc. This board, I believe, is going to be lead agency in SEQA review, which means that the town board won't be able to adopt the zoning amendment until you complete your SEQA review. I think the best way to proceed is to, if you will, for this board at least, disregard the town board's necessity of enacting a zoning change. Process it just as though it was permitted by the zoning up to the point of the public hearing. Then you can either hold the public, I would recommend you do, but I mean, it's up to you, of course. Hold the public hearing and then make your secret determination. And at that point, the town board will be able to enact the zoning change. I've been talking with the town board, and I believe that what they're going to do is, while you're in the process of completing your secret review, get things started on the local law that will be needed for the zoning change, so that there isn't too much of a hiatus time-wise between the secret determination and the local law being enacted. So just process it as you would an application that the zoning was in place for, see where the chips fall as far as secret review goes, and I think everything will fall into place.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Hollis, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I follow Mr. Gaba's comments completely, and I think part of the process too involves a recommendation to the town board as to whether or not the planning board is in favor of the proposed amendments, in addition to the site plan and secret review and subdivision.
Mr. Hollis is correct. Once the zoning law is drafted and before the public hearing is held, the local law will be referred to the planning board for review and comment.
All right, great, thank you. So look, here's to my fellow board members, I guarantee we'd spend at least another hour asking really thoughtful questions of this group. And in this evening, and I have many as well, and I'm sure you all do, we will spend at least an hour, maybe two. We have actions in front of us that we have to take care of this evening. We have got to address CRS. I'm going to suggest the following to this group. I'm going to suggest that we schedule, among the many other actions that Ron has suggested we take, I think we should schedule a public hearing, a site visit. But I also would like to dedicate a chunk of time to the next board meeting. In fact, I'd even like to consider whether we have a separate board meeting that we solely discuss this topic, to let your questions be asked. And that may be even more valuable after what will be probably the most extensive site visit we've ever done physically. Although Glenn remembers the huffing and puffing at the Hudson Highlands Reserve several years ago, which he is still recovering from. So that was just a joke, Glenn. So I don't know if there's a sentiment of the group that are okay holding questions until we meet, and would they be okay with us doing the site visit before we have the chance to ask questions, or would people prefer to wait until we ask a series of questions and then do a site visit. I want to be very mindful that this is not a small physical plant nor a small number of changes. So can I get the sentiment of the group? I'll start with Dennis. Oh, Kim, go ahead. You've raised your hand.
So I'd be in favor of making all the necessary referrals and planning the site visit, and also planning a meeting dedicated to just this project.
Good. Okay. And would you like to have that meeting before we do the site visit, or would you do it?
No, I think we should go look.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good. Others, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with Kim. And having a site visit makes sense to have it before.
Okay. Heidi, you raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say, when we do the site visit, can we get those flags and you know, boundary markers put up so it can be as fruitful as possible, especially since this is such a big site, because it's kind of hard to picture where everything's going to be on the site. So it would be especially helpful if there were kind of, you know, demarcations.
I think that's a great idea.
Very good. Glenn, is that doable? Even with 2 feet of snow?
Yes, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay. Laura, your thoughts?
No, I agree with everything that Kim, Dennis, and Heidi have said.
Okay, so let's just structurally, are we interested in creating a separate Thursday evening meeting that is not tied to not our usual monthly meeting, whether it be 1 week subsequent to the usual meeting or 1 week before, so we can just chew into this thing?
Yes.
People feel okay with that? Is that okay procedurally, Steve, that we set out a date that's outside of our usual meeting schedule?
Yes, you're going to have to post and publish notice of the special meeting though. So you're going to want to schedule it far enough in advance that you can get that out.
Yeah. So what I'm going to suggest, and Kelly, when is our January meeting? Is the 21st? Is that correct?
That's correct. So the 14th would be the week before.
I think I'd push it to the week after. That gives us ample time to do the site visit and then prepare questions. So let's do this. Let's go through the actions that Ron outlines, and then we can come as we usually do the tail end to schedule the site visit date and then schedule this dedicated meeting. Is that okay with everyone? Just give me a nod of your heads if that's okay. All right, well, let's start. For all of you who have Ron's memo in front of you, we'll follow Ron's hymnal, and I'll go in subsequent order for the procedural vote. So can I have a motion to formally classify the project as a major project? Kim? Okay, second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, thank you. Okay. I'm gonna like to, I know that Steve likes to play with us on this one, whether it's combined or separate. I feel like we go back and forth. I'd like to get a motion all related to SEQRA to declare it as a type 1 action with us as a lead agency for this coordinated action. I'm gonna just lump that all together, Steve. You have permission for that.
That's fine. But you're declaring intent to be lead agency.
Yes.
To further involved agencies.
Yes, I would never usurp any authority. No Al Haig moments here. So can I have that motion, please? Peter, thank you. A second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dennis. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay. We have 6 referrals that Ron has outlined. Am I obliged, Steve, to do each one in turn, or can I do a blanket set of referrals if I list them all verbally?
Well, technically, it would be better to do each one individually, but I don't think there's going to be any controversy about this. I think you can do them all at once.
I'm pretty confident.
If someone votes against, you can go back and.
Well, I'm pretty sure we've never had a vote against any referral, but that would be fine. So the referrals outlined by Ron are the following: the Putnam County Planning, State DOT. Obviously, we'll have a long and fruitful discussion about traffic. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Actually, Ron, can you explain that one? I guess it's because of the type 1.
Yeah, DEC is involved for the size of the sanitary disposal system. There's also potential wetland impacts, and they're I think doing maintenance or reconstruction of the dam on the property. That would likewise involve DEC permitting.
Good. Okay,
so they're involved in a few different areas.
I think that's a new one for us, including Putnam County Department of Health, the Conservation Board, of course, and then the Garrison Volunteer Fire Department. So again, Department of Planning, Department of New York State Transportation, New York State DEC, Putnam County Department of Health, Town Conservation Board, and Garrison Volunteer Fire District. Can I have a motion for that?
And if I may speak,
Please, sir.
Neil, one I neglected to identify would be Putnam County Department of Highways and Facilities.
Yes,
Because they're also,
Mr. Canning is,
they're modifying the access on Snake Hill.
well said. So we'll add that as well. May I have a motion for those now 7 referrals?
So moved, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. Kim seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, those are our 7 referrals. Kelly, that's a good send off for you to send all those referrals out. Okay, so then let us schedule first the site visit, which I think we'll have to dedicate at least 2 hours, if not more, for ample coverage of the facility. And I look forward to the applicant doing a pretty well navigated tour that day. That's going to be a lot of work, and especially in the winter, we can't guarantee the weather will cooperate with us. So we'll ask for your indulgence in making sure that day works with the weather. So Kelly, we pull out our calendars. I'm guessing we have available to us the 10th of January or the 17th of January, and maybe even the 24th. Can I just get a sense from the group which of those dates? Maybe we'll start with the applicant, your availability. We typically meet at 9:30. What day do we pick the other one that I was recused from? That was the 7th. All right, so we're going to avoid that because that's going to be an all-day affair then for this group. So I'm going to suggest then the 24th is probably the best date. Sunday the 24th at 9:30, and if we're going to then schedule our dedicated meeting on the 28th, that gives us a nice juicy time to talk about it. So thoughts on the 24th of January? When is Martin Luther King weekend? I'm sorry. Is that weekend?
Before that.
It's the prior weekend.
Fine.
20th.
Thank you. So the 24th, how are people feel to the applicant first? The 24th, can you and your members be available? Mr. Hollis.
Which of our consultants would you like there that day?
Those who know the answers to the questions. No, your job is to walk us through the site and show us it. I'm not sure that the traffic engineer is probably not necessary because he's going to have a lot of, but I think certainly Glenn, Thomas, and I'm sure many other, I've met a number of hangers on and other groupings. So whomever would like to on the 24th. It is a public meeting too, as you know, Mr. Hollis. So I suspect given how many people are here from the participant parties. So, and we sorry, I just realized, and we have a COVID problem, of course. I just realized that, Steve. We have a COVID problem, which is we can only have, is the governor's law about 10 people at max still in effect?
I've looked into it a little bit further, Neil. I think the 10 people only applies to gatherings at residences. I think for an outdoor assembly like this, which is not for recreational purposes, but for government business, I think you're going to be okay.
Good. Okay. So, but imagine this will not be an insignificantly attended event. So we'll need to figure out how to be socially distanced while communicating. So the 24th then to my colleagues?
Okay, by me.
Yep.
Our group, Davis?
That's good.
That's fine for me. Thank you.
All right. So
looking forward to it.
Good. Thank you. So Kelly, let's put in the 24th of January for those members of the public who are hearing this, who are in attendance, who are nearby neighbors and are interested in this situation, in this application. The 24th of January, Sunday, 9:30 a.m. We'll meet. You'll decide where we should best meet to begin the adventure. And then the last thing is, I think I'd like to then suggest the 28th of January. That Thursday will be an extra meeting of this board to spend the dedicated, we'll give it for the normal 2-hour time frame we typically have, 7:30 to 9:30, to spend on this topic solely for this topic. How are people for that date? The 28th of January.
Good here.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Fine.
Fine.
And again, this is the guy that we're all volunteers. I realize this is a burden, but this is a big application and it needs its time. Okay, good. So Kelly, we're gonna have to notice that as well. I think we're done. Anything else? And by the way, board members, I think there's a good opportunity over the holidays to go through your materials, create questions if you have. Ron could collect them for us, for them to ask questions on the site visit and for that meeting in January. And certainly after the site visit, we can do another round of developing questions.
Thank you for putting this all together, Mr. Chairman, in such a quick fashion.
I haven't done anything. This is a big project, and you got 6 other board members who got a lot of work to do, as well as Ron and Steve and Kelly. So thank you all. Anything else, board members? Okay. Thank you very much, applicant, Mr. Davis, et cetera. Thank you, gang.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Chairman, thank you, everyone.
Look forward to working with you. Okay, Kelly, we're on to the coming public hearing.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's begin. Thank you.
You're welcome. William and Laura Cummings, 71 South Mountain Pass Spur, Garrison, New York, tax map number 82.-1-52 and 53. The applicant is seeking section 175.11B dimensional requirements as a subdivision 1 acres from 10 acres to 4.296 acres, a variance of 5.704 acres as the subdivision lot 2, lot frontage from 300 feet to approximately 165.0 feet. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies of the applicant plat map and other related materials may be seen in the office of the Planning Board in the Philipstown Department, dated at Philipstown, New York, November 19th, 2020.
Thank you, Kelly. Do we have the applicant or their representatives to give the quick summary of the action?
Yes, Glenn Watson, and I think Laura Cummings is on. Basically, if I could share my screen.
Please do, Glenn.
You see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to walk you across the top of the map. On the left side, you see the location map. This dashed line that the cursor is following is the county clerk, the county line between Westchester and Putnam. And on to the right of this window, you have Route 9 going north and south. South Mountain Pass leaves Route 9 in Westchester, and it comes up over the mountain, over the mountain, over the mountain, and gets to South Mountain Pass Spur. Is a private road that services at present two lots that actually have improvements, and we have the property at the end of South Mountain Pass Spur. The next panel is the vicinity map, which is just a blow up that shows the 2 lots that exist today on the at the end of South Mountain Pass Spur. Lot 53 is improved with 2 structures, 2 dwellings, and lot 52 is vacant, is a vacant parcel. The application is to take the 2 existing parcels, tax parcel 53, which has the 2 dwellings, and the vacant parcel tax 52. You're seeing the panel you're seeing now is their present configuration. Parcel 2 is a landlocked parcel recently acquired last couple of years. Parcel 1, the improved parcel, has been owned by the family since the early 1970s. The application seeks to adjust the lot line between the 2 lots such that this red area goes from being part of tax lot 53 and becomes merged with tax lot 52. And that results in a configuration that looks like this. Sorry, I have to stop that. Sorry. And there was, we're in a 10-acre zone. We do not have 20 acres of ground, but we have 2 buildings. So we came before you a couple of months ago, a few months ago, I guess now, and seeking this, and you turned us down, rightfully so, because we didn't have adequate area. And there was no real practical way to configure the lots such that, well, we didn't have enough area to do it at all, and there was no way to strike any kind of balance. But what we did do was adjust the line to between the two existing houses, and created and provided some frontage for the second lot that today has no frontage. It created two nonconformities, one of which was the area of parcel 1 is now going to be less than 10 acres, and it's getting smaller, so that was a nonconformity. And the frontage that we would be providing for lot 52 is substandard. That's a second conformity. You sent us off to the zoning board. The zoning board has granted us those variances, and I'm going to really probably foul this up now, but and so now we have created, I'm going to try and make this go down a little bit. This is an overview of the property. This is the actual subdivision plat that you're looking at now. So now what we did was took the division line, the proposed division line down the driveway, and then created an easement for that they would share, and the two houses would branch off. Each house would be on a separate lot. Each house has its existing septic system. Each house has its existing well. And we've accomplished as much as I think we can with regard to making the lots as conforming as possible. And we did get the variances. I think we've given those to you. So now we're here seeking your approval to subdivide the properties as shown here on.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Ron?
Yeah, the board has addressed all required procedural and referrals necessary. You're here tonight for the conduct of the public hearing. And that's the last statutory requirement you have prior to consideration of action on the application.
Okay, thank you. Steve, anything to add?
Ron's correct. It's time to see what the public has to say.
Okay. Board members, questions? No? Okay, let's turn it over to the public. The public comment period begins. So please raise your hand so Kelly can let you in. Oh, Ms. Cumming, do you want to say anything? I'm sorry.
Not at this point.
Okay. Okay.
But happy to answer any questions.
Great. Mr. Daverin, we see you. Why don't you, we got your email this morning, so I assume you want to ask your question, please. Go ahead, sir. You're on mute.
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is Peter Daverin and Stacy Farley. First of all, thank you very much for hearing us out today. I also want to give credit to the planning board for their protocol on notification and transparency. So our hats are off to you in a wonderful process. The only question we have is that the South Mountain Pass spur is a private road, so it's not maintained by the town. And so it's also interpreted as, I believe, a common driveway. And the common driveway, the definition of a common driveway is that there are no more than 4 lots allowed on a common driveway. This is a very long road, by the way. South Mountain Pass Spur is about 3/4 of a mile long. So the question we had was, we have 2 properties on South Mountain Pass Spur. And if this subdivision is approved, will it increase the number of lots towards the total of 4 as the number of lots on a common driveway? That would be question number 1. By the subdivision, does it increase the amount of lots towards the limitation of 4? That would be our first question. The second question would be if that were true, or if not, if it weren't true, is there any way to increase the number of lots on a common driveway through a variance of that regulation to increase the number from 4 to something higher, because the road is so long and it has many lots on it. Is that something that we could potentially apply for after this subdivision goes through?
So I'm gonna go to Ron maybe on that one.
Actually, the project itself is not changing the number of lots on the roadway at all. I mean, it's just a lot line adjustment. With respect to the permitted number of lots on the project, it actually comes back to the age of the roadway, when the road was created, and that I don't know. But that could be investigated separately if and when you ever seek to have development on your parcels.
Okay, so at that point, we could apply for a variance to that regulation and do the investigation on the age of the road and the maintenance of the road, with the hope that maybe the variance to the regulation could increase the number of lots on a common driveway.
Now, again, it's the town code is such that depending on the age of when the road was originally created, it may permit additional lots without need of variance. But that investigation has to be accomplished.
It's only like up to 8 then, Ron, I believe.
Right, exactly. It goes up to 8.
May I address that?
Sure.
As Mr. Davoren points out, it's regulation, it's the land subdivision regulations, it's not the law. There's specific provision in the law for waivers to be granted to that 4-lot variance. It's happened several times over the course of my history in the town. And it generally happens when the resulting lots are 10 acres. That was the general thing. Specifically, it happened off of Route 40 or for Route 301 for the Rockwald subdivision. It happened for the Friedman Keene subdivision on 9D. There have been several instances of it, but this is not a matter of getting a variance. It's a matter of regulation and a matter of the waiver that's provided for in the subdivision regulations. So I just wanted to point that out. It's something that is available.
I'm not sure about the waiver regulations, Glenn. You might be right. I'm just not sure about it. But I mean, if it's a private road, then the ODA standards are going to apply. And somebody who wants to build another lot would just come and say, look, the road's, safe for emergency vehicles.
Right. The ODA, it's specifically in the ODA standards. I checked it.
Like I said, you may very well be right. Well, first off, this doesn't have anything to do with additional lots being created. I completely agree with you on that. But I mean, if we're going to go off into the weeds on I guess the answer to his question is, yeah, there is a procedure to put additional lots on a private road. Let's just leave it.
Okay, well, that's extremely helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. We'll take it from here.
All right, thanks, Peter. Other questions, other comments from the public? Anyone else? Is this Mr. Clifton? Mrs. Clifton? Alex Clifton?
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Clifton.
I believe that I don't know if my parents are on here as well. They had wanted to ask a question. And do you see them on here?
I don't know. There's a Michelle Clifton on.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Ms. Clifton, go ahead.
Well, just to say that I shared a similar concern to Peter Davoren, and I just wanted to say congrats to the Cummings, been great neighbors for a long time, and the fact that they're looking to do this subdivision for their children, I think is wonderful, and it made me think about the fact that we have our property up here as well, and the thought that in the future that we may want to subdivide and give it to our children in a similar way. And we just wanted to know if this would impact our ability to do that. We're on like approximately 25 acres, and it's, I think, 10-acre zoning So I think that there's nothing that would stop us there. It was just a similar question to Mr. Davern's, and I think my mother has a similar question. Thank you very much.
This is Michelle Clifton. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ms.
Okay.
Clifton.
Yeah. That was one concern that we had, that my son Alex just said, that if we wanted to do, divide our 24 plus acres into 2 parcels in the future, if that was possible, and what we would have to do that. And I had one other question, just from looking at the map that was put up by Glenn Watson. With the way that the property is, with the separate parcel that is, I guess they said it was landlocked, is that something that in the future could be developed, or is that, and if so, could that be joined with these properties? I was just
It's less than 10 acres.
No, the one, no, anyway, let me, and I don't see a map up, so I can't tell which one it is, but do you understand my question?
That lot being merged into together. That second lot will be one house up. So
Ms. Clifton, why don't you mute your phone for a second? I think you have 2 phones.
Okay, how do I, where do I mute?
Kelly, why don't you mute Ms. Clifton? Thank you. Okay, Glenn, go ahead and answer her.
that second lot is being merged to accommodate the second house. So there will be 2 lots, both of which will have insufficient area. No, I'm sorry, one of which will have insufficient area, but neither would be subdividable. So there would be a statutory limitation on doing anything more. There's 2 lots, 2 houses, 1 on each lot, and that's as much as we could do.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Clifton?
And that, from the map that was up, wait here, how do I do this?
Glenn, put your map back up for me.
Someone's putting the map back.
Okay, so where the area that says area 2, is that now going to be with the larger house?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Hi, Michelle, it's Laura.
Hi, Laura, thank you. And the other question that I still don't quite understand is, if this was a property that was all one and now is being subdivided, is it meaning that it stays as one on this road, or does it now take up 2 of the 4 positions available on the private road?
I think it's important for you to understand that this is not a subdivision, although it's processed as a subdivision. Hello?
Keep going, Steve. She's on mute because she's got some sort of echo going.
Oh, okay. I can't hear myself talk, so I thought I was on mute as well. Anyway, the point is that there are 2 lots now. After this application is approved, there will still be 2 lots. They're not creating a new lot. They're just changing the boundary line between 2 lots. So that's different than a subdivision. Would not result in an additional lot on the private roadway.
Thank you very much for the answers to our questions. And thank you for all your service to our town.
Thank you, Mr. Clifton, Mrs. Clifton. Any other public comments? Do we see anybody else, Kel? Did I lose Kelly? We have lost Kelly. Oh, there you are, Kelly. Anyone else who's raised their hand?
Nobody else has raised their hand.
All right, good. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing then? Kim's, Peter second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, and abstentions. Okay, thank you very much. I do think it's valuable to just state that the conversation that we just had does not provide any opinion about future projects that may be applied for on that road. We're talking about this particular application right now, the coming. So I just want to be clear about that. So I think we can direct Ron then to you to provide the documentation for our next meeting to approve, if we so choose. You're on mute, Ron.
I didn't realize you were waiting for me. Sure, that would be the next step in this process for the board to take that action.
Board comfortable with that? I'm going to ask for a motion to that, but can I have a motion then to direct Ron to provide the appropriate resolutions? Thank you, Kim. Kim, for our next meeting to be signed. Okay, got double thumbs up from Kim. A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions. All right, thank you, Ms. Cumming. Good luck. We'll see you next time to vote formally. Okay, CRS.
Thank you to the board.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. All right, well, we are 5 minutes from the end of our formal meeting. I'm going to ask for us to spend, let's try and see if we can, let me ask you this. Ron, how much time do you think we need on 3622 Route 9?
The board recently conducted a site inspection. You provided the applicant with comments. He's provided a resubmittal for your consideration. It's really for the board to review that and understand if they're now satisfied with the proposal as currently envisioned. The next step in the process would be to schedule a public hearing if you're so disposed.
Okay. And then, Glenn, as you shared with me, Riverview, I'm not sure there's an action to take tonight on Riverview. I'm just trying to figure out how we can manage this because I don't want to spend another hour. It's already 9:30 and it's been getting late. So what actions we take on Riverview tonight, Ron?
No action required. It's really a matter for the applicant's representatives to respond to the comments raised at the sidewalk.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's go through CRS, and if we have time, we'll talk about scheduling the Route 9 and discuss Route 9, 3622 Route 9 and schedule, but we may not get to it tonight. So CRS, let's get into it. As I mentioned at the public meeting we had when we walked Riverview, I wanted to use this time to, we've had many meetings on CRS. We have a weird echo. Maybe Kelly, could you go, Peter and Kelly, could you go on mute, please? Thank you. Not sure where the echo is coming from, sorry. So we've had 3 public hearings, or a public hearing over 3 sessions. We had an hour-long, if not longer, discussion last meeting about CRS. We've had the applicant provide us several redone traffic studies. I think we have provided, we've had ample discussion. I think it's time now to provide some real guidance to the applicant about how we're feeling. So I'm going to ask this group, and as I said earlier, we're going to go in alphabetical order by last name. And I'm going to ask the sentiment of each board member towards this application. And by sentiment, I mean, how are you feeling about it? And what, if any, mitigations could you imagine which would help your viewpoint of the project? I'm not asking you to vote. But I am asking you to provide clarity about how you feel so we can give the applicant some guidance. So I know that's a vote without a vote is an inappropriate way to describe it. And so Steve, but I do want to actually have a conversation about how people are feeling and so we can provide guidance. So Kim, I'll begin with you if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so I think that what I'd like to know is what the response was from the DOT, because the DOT made a suggestion that they do, a 3-point something or other. I can't right this minute. I can't remember what the exact language is. And that they were supposed to submit something to the DOT to show why they didn't have to do that. Because I noticed when I was looking through the documents that one of the things that the DOT mentions is that for a particular turn, I believe it was the left turn, it seemed as though the truck would hit the guardrail. So I'd just like to know if it's possible to have some clarification about that. And I think, in general, I'd like to put in a word for asking these businesses that are going to have trucks that might have to back up or, do unusual maneuvers to require flag people out on the road to help manage traffic. We may not be allowed to do that, but I just wish we could. So that's my main statement. Is that good?
Okay. Well, I don't know if it's good. Is it? Are you clear about how you feel about the project? I mean,
Well, I think that they've supplied us with, everything we've asked for. It's just a question of whether or not we think it's acceptable, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. I mean, I'm not asking, because at some point soon, we're going to have to meaning at the end of this conversation, direct Ron to provide some resolutions, and we're going to have to take a vote on it. So I guess I'm just trying to get a sentiment for how you feel about that, so we can give some clarity about what you want the applicant to maybe try to do.
I'd like some reassurance that the DOT thinks that this entrance is acceptable.
Okay.
And if so, then I think that's the authority that we have to go with.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Dennis, I think you were up next in the alphabetical sweepstakes.
Oh, thank you, Neil. The DOT is I think, a major consideration, because I was concerned that turning radius from day one. Their traffic consultant is trying to assure us, and I think he has, that the DOT is going to approve it or have a wider entry with a so-called mountable curb in the event that they hit it. But I'm still concerned with the turning radius as a truck is coming down Route 9, that they might have to, in order to make that turn, cross the double yellow line. If DOT is going to approve that, again, I think it's out of our hands. The only other items regarding the project itself would be landscape screening, in consideration of the neighbors. And I also would like to take in consideration if there is a backlog or backup of trucks waiting to unload or load, that they're not having their engines running. Again, the noise, pollution, things like that. Other than that, I think it's a project that's for business expansion. I think it's a good project, but with those considerations, that's where I'm concerned.
Very good. Kelly, Laura O'Connell is trying to dial in. Can we include her as a panelist so she can? I hope it sounds like she can hear. Laura, can you hear us? We can't. I don't think we can see you, so we're going to try and make you a. I see her as an attendee. She's the 917 number, Kelly, I believe, at the top. There we go. Great. All right, great. We got Laura. Great. Thank you. All right, Dennis, that's very clear. And again, Glenn, as the representative of the applicant, if you have any questions about what the board members are suggesting. So we've heard DOT effectively approval, if you will, of the widened entry as a condition. And we've also heard a desire to understand screening and audio pollution, if you will, running the trucks while they're parked, I guess is Dennis's point. Is that a fair assessment, Dennis?
Yes, that would be, Neil.
Thank you. All right, Peter.
Okay, my concerns really echo in a lot of ways Kim's and Dennis's. I guess in a greater sense, I'm concerned about more truck traffic on Route 9, which nonetheless is our kind of commercial corridor that goes up and down the landscape here as it allows us. So I did have that. I felt a little bit the southern encroachment of a commercial zone on Route 9 was also something I was thinking of, and screening, as Dennis brought up, but also, like the other two members, I feel like the ducks are kind of in the row. There's no ridgeline, wetlands, steep slope issues that concern here. There's the traffic study. I think they've tried hardest they could. And I think that if we get that DOT confirmation that we should move forward on this. That's me, what I have to say.
Then Peter, on your truck traffic point, are you of an opinion that you would require or like to see some restriction on the number of truck trips?
No, I don't think so. I think the business is going to have, you know, a fairly clear plan and how much they're going to be doing in terms of trucks in and out and what they're going to need to be able to do to be a profit running business. And really, since Route 9 is our truck route, I think we're kind of stuck with it until we get another truck route.
Okay. All right. Laura? You're on mute, Laura. Maybe Kelly, you can unmute her remotely. No, you can't. Can I do that? No, I can't do that. You can't do that remotely for her?
No, if she's dialed in, I think she's got to do pound or *6.
All right. Did you hear that, Laura?
Think.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
There.
Cool. All
Thank
right. Look at
you.
the town board members are adding value left and right. Well done, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Floor is yours, Laura.
So I actually echo everybody as well. I think, you know, sure, I think that there are concerns with regard to the Route 9 corridor, but to that same point, I don't think we can really do much about that. I think as an applicant, they've done their due diligence. I think I agree, once we get the DOT report or an answer from the DOT, that pretty much puts closure to all of it. I am concerned with regard to the other applications that we have, but we can't hold this applicant hostage due to the other applications that we have coming up. So to Peter's point and to the other board members, you know, I think once we get the DOT report, you know, it is what it is.
Could you clarify, Laura, your point with the other applications? I'm not sure I understood that, and maybe others. You can't see people's faces. Go ahead.
So we have the other application regarding the 3622 Route 9. We also have Riverview, that's also as well on Route 9. So, you know, once this goes through, I know that one application doesn't necessarily set a precedent to all the other applications. But, you know, we are consistently getting more projects that are along that Route 9 corridor. I understand that it is our truck route, as Peter had said. So it is what it is. And I'm just going to assume that actually to the benefit is CRS's move from where they are now to the new location is actually in a better location. So there is some positiveness to the positive, you know, to this application. But, you know, I am concerned that there is more happening on Route 9, and this is just one of many. But we can't hold this application hostage with all of the other future stuff. So based upon this application, they've done their due diligence. Once we get the DOT report, you know, I think it closes it up.
So thank you for that, Laura. A question for Steve before we go to Heidi. So Steve, what is a degree of freedom for us as a board to raise the topic of some ceiling of tolerable traffic on Route 9? It's a state-run road, cuts through the town of Philipstown. Do we have a vehicle to communicate, whether the town board or other places, about there being a sentiment that traffic is getting heavy and difficult, knowing, I forget what applicants, what public member said, that it's one of the only stretches of Route 9 that is a one lane in each direction?
There are two activities that the board could undertake in regard to the issue of truck traffic on Route 9. The first one, as I think Laura kind of pointed out, is that there are other developments that are underway which might cause or contribute to truck traffic. And in doing your secret review on any individual project, you're allowed to take into consideration incremental impacts from other projects that are being contemplated or proposed. So you are free to take into consideration that other projects will contribute to truck traffic. I don't know that it affects this particular project, but I mean, if you did have a situation where it was like, gee, you look at everything adding up together, you would be allowed to, as part of SECRA, to impose reasonable conditions to limit the amount of truck traffic contributed by one particular site. In terms of Route 9, it's under the DOT's jurisdiction. I think the most you could do would be to call the issue or concerns you have the attention of the town board and ask the town board to interface with the DOT to see what kind of restrictions they might impose. Frankly, I can't imagine what they would do, but if it's something that you want to dialogue between the town and the DOT over, that's the route to take.
Bob, how do you feel about helping us in that front?
Yeah, we could try, but we haven't had much luck with the DOT at all on Route 9 for the last few years on anything we tried to do. So we can look into it for sure.
Would a formal letter from the board to the town board be of help?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay, Steve, I'll send some notes around to the board, and maybe we'll get some agreement on a letter we can draft to the town board about the increasing traffic. Okay, Heidi, over to you. Apologies for the delay.
Well, I would say that I am not really in favor of the project because of the concerns of the residents. I mean, what concerns me in this particular, with respect to the site, is that we heard from residents that it's already dangerous for them to come out onto Route 9. And I guess if, I'm not sure if I saw that the traffic engineer did say that it would be possible to have a flag person, perhaps, at least with the big trucks. I'm not sure if I saw that in the chat or not. And I guess I don't entirely, I hear what you were all saying about the limits of our jurisdiction. If overall safety is something that we are allowed to take into account, I would say that I'm not convinced that having large trucks coming in and out of the site or the truck traffic in general is safe for the residents that live in the close proximity, and actually told us at the hearing that they feel unsafe. That just seems to me very problematic. So that's my view.
Sorry, Heidi, any other you mentioned flagging, which Kim mentioned. Are there other mitigations that would get you more comfortable?
If the biggest trucks make, I mean, those seem the most sort of, problematic. So I suppose if the applicant were to agree not to use the biggest trucks, there's already a lot of trucks on 9, but the difference there is those trucks are not coming out of a site right near where the residents say they're already having major problems. I mean, it just really sends a chill down my spine to think that I just don't feel comfortable on safety grounds approving a project where people have actually told us they are already having a lot of trouble coming out onto the roadway. And what if, and if assuming that safety is something we're allowed to base our approval on, I feel like I couldn't sleep at night thinking that those neighbors are scared to death to come out on the roadway. I don't want to approve a project where we've heard that. That's my feeling. I don't know if that's just something, I'm new to the board. It could be that somebody says that about every project. I haven't heard it yet. I take those concerns really, really seriously. And it really frightens me to think that there could be a fatal accident or a bad accident at that spot. And the difficulty is that site is right near where there's people, where there's residences. And so that seems to me not a great site to have a lot of truck traffic coming in and out, where you have people actually living, coming in and out of their property. Maybe they're not living in the safest place in the first place, but I don't feel comfortable just consigning them to that position.
Thank you, Heidi. And then I'll just recap what I heard were several mitigations that board members were interested in hearing. I don't know whether I consider the state DOT's opinion to be a mitigation. Sounds like that's an input. But I heard flagging when a truck is coming in. So some gentleman or person would come out and I guess wave them in with some reflective material. I heard the size of the driver, which I guess is the DOT point. I heard size of trucks that Heidi mentioned. I think right now there's no limitation, or maybe 53-foot trucks are what the standard is. Maybe there's a limitation on the truck size. We heard number of truck trips. Certainly that's something I think is worthy of discussing, because I believe that there was a desire in the report to keep the truck limits to a certain amount, but it wasn't a requirement, it was an expectation. And then screening that Dennis mentioned, both visual screening and I guess I describe it as audio screening for idling trucks as noise pollution and frankly regular pollution. So those are some of the mitigations that we've heard. I don't know, Glenn, if it's worthy of the applicant taking some of these pieces of feedback and giving not that these are new points, but a consideration of these.
Well, I'd like to just address a couple of them right here now. And first of all, Jason Brennan from DOT said he might join. I don't know if he's out there. No, okay, well, we obviously couldn't compel him to join, but he said he might. First of all, we have submitted traffic accident data. And we have demonstrated sight distance, and the sight distance we demonstrated was longer than is necessary. But let me come back to the intersection in a minute. If I can share my screen for just a second. And is John Canning still out there? No, John might want to jump in here.
He's out there somewhere, yes.
Before I ask him to talk about it, the issue with regard to Reichert up the street, which was mentioned, that's not going to increase the traffic or anything on Route 9. That's going to control it better. We're not anticipating a change in the use that's going on there. We're anticipating a controlled intersection and an improvement in what's going on already. So that's not really a point. If you take a look at this, oh, I didn't do it right. There, I got to do that. There. If you take a look at the plan, the trucks will unload over in here. I'll take my cursor and the trucks are gonna pull past this point, this jog in the building, and back into an unloading space. The truck is gonna come in, it's gonna go around, it's gonna come around, it's gonna come here, gonna pull up and back up. Now we're gonna be able to stack at least, and I haven't measured it, but I'm gonna say at least 5 trucks behind him. Our anticipated traffic is 2 trucks a day, not 5. And the difficulty with the other site is because it's just not maneuvering room. Here we're providing the maneuvering room. So once we get off the road, we could stack far more trucks than is going to be coming into this facility. I think that should be evident, to be perfectly blunt about it. We did look at the 2 options that DOT gave us with regard to the throat, to the entry, and there was 2 different versions. The first one that they wanted, and frankly, it was their preferred version, we couldn't make work, but we did make the second one work. So we've responded to DOT in that regard. And the last thing I'll say before I ask John to just talk about that, and I'll come back about landscaping when he's done. oh, I should say, if you want, with regard to the noise, we would certainly be able to post a couple of signs or signs around the route of the trucks that said, turn your engine off, do not idle. If you wanted that, that's not an issue. And my last point is that your normal practice, and the practice for an awfully long time, has been that it's subject to your approval is subject to acquiring the DOT permit. And now we're going to have to get a DO. You're talking about reversing that. And frankly, I just don't think it's justified with all the work we've done. John, if you could take over.
Can I just interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
When you just said 2 trucks a day.
Right.
The document that we got from CRS for this particular meeting said 20 trucks a day.
Two of the big trucks a day, excuse me.
Okay.
If I wasn't clear about that, I apologize.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Yes. So if John, if you would come on and talk about that, the maneuvers, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I just want to thank the board because I recognize how difficult your job is and how seriously you take it and how you are concerned for the residents. And frankly, my job is to make sure this operates safely as well. And I'm a normal person like everybody else. I'm concerned for residents all up and down the river. So this driveway has been designed to the highest standards that we can get DOT to approve. And since we've met with this board, we've gone back to the DOT and asked them to approve the 33-foot driveway width, which would make it a little bit better. And with that, there'll be no guide rails hit. As Glenn said, it has sight distance for the 95th percentile, not the 85th percentile. And the level of truck activity will not be to the extent that I think everybody's fears are. There will be a considerable number of smaller trucks, maybe 16 to 18 a day. And then the operator basically has a schedule, and it was provided in our most recent letter to you, which is basically they have 2 trucks. I don't recall the time they come in at, but neither of them is in the peak hour. And that's their daily operation. It's a pretty straightforward, regular thing. So we've worked with DOT. I'm disappointed that we weren't able to get a letter out of them at this point to say that they accept the 33-foot driveway. They did ask us to look at something else, but it didn't work. And I was looking for the email on that, but I couldn't find it. But the trucks will be able to turn in and maneuver around the site. They have the sight distance then to pull out and see that somebody's coming before they go. So, I mean, we've done everything we can. And if DOT doesn't approve it, then, we're stuck. So
Thank you, John. So Dennis, I think brought the point up. Maybe it was Kim first, and Dennis certainly repeated it. The notion of the DOT permission to create this wider entrance seems like an important part of the sentiment of this board.
Yes.
And I understand what Glenn said about the order of operation historically. It does seem to me that having DOT's viewpoint is a major input to this board's perspective on the safety concerns. And I think our board member, Heidi Wendell, we really do appreciate, Heidi, you taking what sounds like, from the conversation before, you took a personal, if not risk a stand. And I admire that. And I think it's important when we do that. And we each have done that in different meetings. So I am actually of the mindset, and I don't know how Kim or Dennis or others feel, I'm of the mindset that I would like to wait until we receive DOT input on this project to approve it. I realize that is a burden on the applicant, although it is winter and with 2 feet of snow, I'm not sure there's much you can do on that property at this very moment. I don't know, Steve, if that is within our purview, but it certainly feels like that is the sentiment of the board, that DOT's input is fairly important to the board's sentiment of the safety of this location. Go ahead, Steve.
I think input is just fine. I think you might be pushing things to say they got to get a DOT permit before you would grant site plan approval. But I think a letter or communication of some kind from DOT, I mean, I know they can be difficult to get them to commit, but I would think that some input would be available. And if it isn't, they can come back and say, look, DOT just won't put anything in writing. This is what they tell us they feel like, but they won't give us a letter. If that's the case, then you move on from there. But I think until that happens, you're well within your rights saying, look, we want to know what DOT thinks about this before we approve a site plan.
So Glenn, before you go, I wanted to get the sentiment of my colleagues, and I'm going to go one by one. I'll start with Connor. So we're back to alphabetical order. Is that some people would like to see done first before we make a decision?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do you want to wait for DOT input?
Yes,
before?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Gagnon.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to get something from DOT.
Good. Mr.
Their
Lewis?
consideration
Okay.
for the approval.
Good. Mr. Lewis?
I'd like to wait for it too, but if DOT's got a reputation of never responding to things, I don't know, maybe we should have a date that, we say that. I mean, is it possible at this point simply to, if DOT doesn't respond, to simply widen the mouth to 33? I mean, how long do you have to wait for those people to act?
And that's clearly not a question to me. So,
Well, the question, the point is, we wouldn't be able to put in to have you sign any site plan unless we had that permit.
So to be able to extend the mouth, you'd have to have the permit.
I know, but Glenn, what I'm telling is the sentiment of this board seems to be that the width would provide more comfort of the operation, and with the denial of the width, it sounds like this board would like to think about other mitigations, is what I'm hearing from my colleagues. Laura?
Yeah, I would like to wait as well.
Heidi?
Me too, yes.
All right, so, oh, sorry, Neil, I apologize, I'm sorry.
That's all right, Neil. I don't, I've got my other screen here. We've been back and forth on this. I've seen the plans. I've looked at the distances. I don't care what the DOT says. I think they've done their due diligence. I think, like Peter said, I've spent a lot of time waiting for the DOT and the DEC, and I'm okay. I'm okay approving this the way it is.
Well, I think I'm counting the votes as president, and before that, Senator Johnson would do. If I had to make a rough sense of the count, it seems like we have 5-2 in terms of waiting, and we can take a formal vote. But it sounds like the sentiment of the 7 of us is to wait for DOT input before taking action. And so we can take a vote to ask to whether produce resolutions at this point, but it sounds like the vote would be no and to wait for that DOT. I think Peter brings up a good question about a date certain to give it some period of time for response. Clearly, the Christmas holidays are not a great time for government employees to respond. I'm okay creating a date, let's say the end of February, so 2 months to get some response, and then we can revisit it at that point. But it feels like the sentiment of this board is to wait for DOT input. And I see a lot of heads nodding, and I think that's so. If I don't know if we need a formal vote on that point, but that feels like what the group is describing.
So,
Mr. Chairman, just one point. The public hearing was closed at the October meeting.
Yes.
And I think statutorily you have 62 days in which to act after the close. I would recommend that you seek from the applicant tonight just at least some verbal confirmation that they're willing to extend the timeframes for you to take an action on the matter.
Do you have that authority, Glenn?
I have that authority. I don't think it's necessary because the secret loop is not closed.
We'd feel better if the applicant would be willing to agree to that. I don't think there's default approval for site plans anyway. But
Let me take a gun out of my ear and I'll decide what to. Yeah, I guess I'll commit on the applicant an extension till the next month's meeting, and we can talk about it again. I'll give you a letter to that effect.
I think that's fine.
All right, so let's. I don't think we need to take an action then at this point. So we'll revisit this at the January meeting then. Thank you, Glenn. This is a difficult topic, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for your service and your thoughtful comments. And Heidi, again, I appreciate you taking a clear stance on the safety issues. It's important. It's a big deal. And Mr. Canning, thank you for all your diligence, and I appreciate you are a regular guy. We appreciate regular guys here. It helps. It helps. All right, so we have one more matter we're going to try and get to. Let's do Route 9, 3622. We had a site visit. I don't think we need a repeat of that. Glenn, you're the, oh, so it's not Glenn.
No,
Oh,
I'm leaving.
all right.
Good night,
All
all.
right. Good night, Glenn. Thank you. So Ron, what you want to, you've obviously shared your results of the site visit with Mr. Thyberg here.
Yeah, he's actually on. Here he comes now.
Kelly, I think you can remove Mr. Canning from the screen as well. Okay, Mr. Thyberg, it's 10 o'clock. We've been at this 2.5 hours. So I'd like to do the highlights from Hamlet here.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so since last month, when we last discussed this, a few highlights to touch on are that per Mr. Gaynor's recommendation, this rear building has been pulled forward about 15 feet. If I switch over, if you can just let me know that you see the aerial. Yes, we can see this.
Yes.
The switch over to the aerial. So this has been, so the disturbance along the property line has been reined back, which would allow to preserve more of the tree line back in this area. In addition to those adjustments to the site plan, septic and stormwater testing was conducted last week and came back. The testing went well. So the stormwater septic will be essentially designed more or less as it's been seen, maybe with some minor adjustment. And then finally, I guess the last of the highlights since the last meeting are we have started to look at the building materials and architecture. The applicant is working with a designer on that to come up with elevations and some other things. But in the meantime, we wanted to just give a quick flavor of the material and color scheme that's being considered. So this is again, this is for the use as contractor storage and office. So this would be likely a metal building. There's also opportunities for a different kind of exterior finish that would be essentially an insulated foam that allows for different types of finishes on the outside. But you know, we're primarily looking at this kind of metal type building. Again, we're leaning into the direction of earth tones, maybe greens for a trim or something along those lines, to allow it to blend into the landscape. But again, those designs are in the process of being worked on now, and we'll have more detail on that going forward. But just to give you kind of a sense of that. And those are kind of the highlights, and I can get into other questions if the board has any.
Ron?
I guess for me, I just wonder, when will building architecturals be available, Madam?
We should be able to provide some elevations for the next meeting. So it's also a question of what is it specifically you're looking for? Are we specifically looking for detailed elevations? Are we looking for floor plans? How what
I don't know
level of
about
detail
floor plans specifically, but exterior elevations would be appropriate.
That's what we were thinking. Yeah, that to really try and give you a sense of how this is going to look from the road. And that's something that we're hoping to pull together for the next meeting.
And how about the tree survey that you were doing to locate
Yeah, that's been
existing mature trees?
Yes, that's been conducted. Our survey team is getting ready to work those into our plan, and those will be shown on the plan in the next round.
I guess one last wonder I have for you is just the parking that you're showing in front of the front building. Is it possible at all to put that parking in the rear and afford some better opportunity for landscaping along that large building?
There could be opportunity for that. As I said, we're working on the architecture and part of it is going to include overhead doors for, contractor access. So the location of the parking gets a little tricky with that. We could potentially show the parking in front of that. It would be dedicated parking for each individual tenant, and then they could park in front, use the overhead door and park in front of it as they see fit. And we could probably work something out from there. But yeah, that could be a possibility if that's something that the board wanted to see.
Thank you.
Ron, do we have sufficiently complete information for a public hearing at this point?
Well, yeah, I think the board would better want to appreciate the exterior appearance of the building and probably get some better definition of landscaping. And for me, that would involve understanding just where mature vegetation exists today and whether there's any possibility of trying to retain what you have in addition to the enhancements they're proposing.
Yeah, that should all be available with with our next submission.
So do we have the capacity to schedule a public hearing, or do we need to see that material first?
No, it's entirely the board's discretion. I just want to make sure that it is available for you to review as well as the public, should you schedule a hearing.
Okay. All right,
You know,
Steve,
I think you're looking at potential significant changes to this plan. I mean, we're talking about moving the parking spaces, among other things. I really think, look, I mean, it's the board's decision, as Ron very rightly says. But I mean, given the way that the board's treated applications like this in the past, you're probably going to want to see a further submission before you schedule.
I think that's fair. All right, other trains loud, all said. Board questions? From the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Kim.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, so I'm trying to understand how only 59.3% of this lot is impervious surface. I'm trying to understand what counts as impervious surface and what doesn't. Because it seems to me this lot is, as we've talked about paving and things like that in the past, those are impervious surfaces. So that's the first question. The second question is for storage. It says in the code that outside storage on properties in the highway, commercial, or OC district should not exceed 20% of the lot area located in the district. Now, I don't know if the outside storage you have marked here is more than 20%, but it looks pretty big. And then the third question I have has to do with this stormwater basin. And I'd really like to know what that's going to look like. Is it going to be a big pit full of riprap? What I'd like some detail on actually because it's very large, and I'd just like to know what it is. And additionally, we'd like to be sure that the trees that you're planting, within 5 years will screen everything. And then there also is the outside requirement about not screening for outside storage, not exceeding the height of that storage. So those are my questions.
Okay, yeah, let me try and take those in order. I don't know if I wrote them down in order, but I'll hit on all of those. So in regard to the outdoor storage, yes, this is under the 20% threshold. We're at about 39,000 square feet of storage, which is a bit under 20% of the total lot area. So we do meet that requirement. Then in regard to the height, we are showing screening to the adjacent properties. These are specified to go in at 8 to 10 feet. These are mostly spruces, which grow pretty quickly. So you'll pick up a foot or so a year. So yes, these will fill in pretty nicely, and these will be tall trees at maturity. And then just to what was left.
So the impervious surface.
Yeah. So for the impervious surface, yes. What was included in that is essentially what you see in the outdoor storage, based on the Philipstown code definition, gravel still falls under an impervious definition. Obviously, the buildings and paved areas. So that is included in that number. And then in regard to the stormwater basins, these would be seeded, but they would also, you know, as the grading and the design of these are cleaned up, we don't intend to keep them as you know, these neat little rectangles. You know, these will be developed now that we have our testing. These will be developed a bit more as far as the shape, and then when that's done, we'll be able to show some planting around the outside, and then these will be seeded with different types of native plant seeds that would be able to inhabit these areas where they have intermittent inundation with a storm. They'd fill up with water, so you have plants that can handle both dry and wet conditions.
Okay, so it's not riprap.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other board members' questions? All right. So it sounds like, it's very late. It sounds like the applicant's going to do another turn and get back to us in January. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would seek just a little bit more guidance on, and maybe from the board, just in regard to the level of interest in seeing these parking spaces, you know, move. You know, we've shown, you know, more than the required landscape buffer. You know, we're happy to move them, you know, but it wasn't something that was in the plans until, you know, that suggestion was just made, and it's something that we could certainly look at, but just maybe a little bit more input on, you know, what exactly you'd be looking for in regard to that.
I think it sounds like it was a suggestion Ron had. It maybe be worthwhile to see it. Clearly, our code does ask for as much screening as possible for non-retail businesses. So I don't know. Gesundheit, Kim. Other thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
I don't know, if we were to move the parking to the back side of the building, would that mean that the truck loading would would move to the front?
No.
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 So we could actually move the parking to the back and still maintain the integrity, as it were, of the front.
I'll want to check with the envisioned operations of the applicant, but I would not see a situation where we would be looking to load trucks in the front. The idea of having our parking in the front to provide open space for overhead doors was the idea. There might be some hybrid option where we can put parking in overhead doors in the same location, and I'll have to see operationally with the applicant what he wanted to do with that. But I don't see a condition where we would be looking to load in the front.
Okay, thank you.
Kim, you want to ask something?
I was just going to say that to make that point that was made about retail businesses, you know, the argument for parking bay in front of the building when it's retail business is so that you can see that it's open, but if it's a non-retail business, I believe the code preference is to have parking in the back where possible. So Ron can correct me on that, but so I would agree with that.
Okay, Heidi, are you off mute? Heidi, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask something following up on I think a question Kim had when we had the site visit, and it might be answered there on the plan, but I can't see the writing too well. But I know Kim had asked, or somebody had asked, whether in the area where the salt and other chemicals are being stored, I think originally the hoop house area, whether that could have an impermeable floor to make sure that's happening now.
Yes, that would be on a concrete slab.
Okay.
That's a requirement of your code.
Okay, I thought there was an issue that the area where the chemicals were being stored did not seem particularly
So I just want to clarify the language. So the hoop house that we've shown as a potential future installation would essentially be the enclosure that could potentially be used, not necessarily, but could potentially be used for salt storage for such a contractor that would be doing, what we're seeing a lot of today. Any of the chemical storage, or if we're talking about herbicides, pesticides, and these and the like, that might be something that a landscape contractor might need to store, those would be stored internal to the buildings with storage practices that would meet whatever regulations were required. So those items would not be stored outside. The rest of the storage in this area would be for the typical construction materials, stone, things like that.
Other questions? Okay, so it seems like we're going to wait for the applicant to do another turn, which we can discuss at the January board meeting. Mr. Thyber, do you have what you need?
Yeah, I think so. I may want to reach out to Mr. Gaynor if that is permissible.
Absolutely.
In the interim? Okay.
Your applicant is paying fees for access to Ron, et cetera. So
very good.
Ron or Steve, other things you want to add?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward at this point. We'll take it up in January.
Good.
Yeah,
All right.
I have nothing further.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Sorry, are there any further questions from the board about any topic whatsoever? I'm sorry this has gone long tonight. The choice was to not have this last session or not. I chose to go forward. So apologies for your late night. There'll be extra paycheck for your Christmas bonus. A Merry Christmas to all. Happy New Year. Thank you for your service. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. God bless you all. Take care.
All right.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
All right.
Happy holiday.
Thanks for all your
Thanks, Kelly.
service.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good holiday.
You guys all have fun.
I am.